It's really about good governance. We are very strong advocates for the council-manager form of government. Particularly noteworthy, it is called the council-manager form of government, not the city-manager form of government, which is often referred to. And that's important because you as a council take actions, and set policy, and the manager and the staff are responsible for carrying out that policy. That's something we very much believe in and encourage that in all of the training that we do. Yeah, I think we talked about our training, the risk managers. One of the other important roles, other than providing the training, and we have training staff that provides the training. We have subject matter experts that provide the training. We have training staff that works with your staff to design the training program for what your employees need and what your council members need. We do 1, 2, 3, 4 training. We do the harassment training. So we understand what the members need, and we provide that to you. There's no cost for the training. It's included within the coverage. There's no annual stipend of you get this much. It's all included within the cost of coverage. So the risk managers provide the access to the training and help guide training. The very important part that they do is what we call our Loss Control Action Plan program, LOSCAP. LOSCAP is a manner that we will come to the city. We will review all your loss history on about every 2 to 3 year basis. We'll review your loss history. We will we'll read the paper. We have Google alerts and all those sorts of things, so we know when things are going on. We have some members where we see their name, this council member's names in the paper, sometimes a little too frequently for the wrong reasons. That raises our awareness of what's going on. Sometimes we hear things at training sessions where we hear questions that are repeatedly coming from staff. So when we get that information, we bring that into the whole discussion of our loss control action plan. The risk manager is responsible for coordinating the risk management evaluation, which is go to all your facilities, look at them physically. Are there risks there that need to be addressed? We deal with your contracts and your agreements and your policy and your procedures. We read your policies. We ask upper level staff about the policy. Then we ask line staff if they understand the policy in the same manner. And then we identify at the end of this a list and a report that is given to the executive management team. Some cities share with the city council, some don't, but that's your prerogative. The loss control action plan goes to the executive management team, and we have a whole list of all the things we found. It's a long audit, it's a checklist, it's specific, the ladder in that building by that water tower, whatever, very specific. But then at the end, we come to what are the priority action items that we see that the city really needs to address. That may be adopting a policy, that may be a variety of different things. The Loss Control Action Plan program is then renewed about every 3 years. So we come back. Our risk manager works with you to try to get those things accomplished, the things that are on the priority list. The Loss Control Action Plan has shown us where we need to apply our resources to help our members. One of the things that we identified was the Americans with Disability Act. There are very few cities that could say they are fully in compliance with the Americans with Disability Act. We have funded a program to help members do their self-assessment, prepare their transition plans. We have a financing program that helps agencies to fund barrier removal over a time period with a very low interest rate return on the loan. So we really have worked with our members to provide things that they want and they've asked for and that we've identified that they need. I think for your consideration tonight, you have some numbers that are in front of you. I believe they're in your council agenda packet. There's some discrepancy in some of the information. I think, but we're pretty close. At this point, I think in the process for you, it would be worthy of your effort to do some further exploration with your staff. Have them look at California JPA, look at CSAC. There's other pools out there, but give yourself that opportunity to do that to ensure that you are getting what is best for you and your citizens. You know, Rick and I, we're, probably both going to be at the conference in a couple of weeks. We're all going to be together. There's going to be Rick. There's going to be me. There's going to be a guy who's out in Palm Desert. I mean, there's a lot of pools like this. We all, as he said, we share a lot of things. We share best practices. We really want what is best for you, the members, and the citizens. We don't want you spending more for us. I'm not sure you would. That's part of the numbers part. We don't want you to spend more for us. We want you to keep your resources local as best you can so you can provide services to these people rather than us taking it and sending it off to attorneys and to insurance companies. We're not a company. We are a membership organization, and you would be our member. You get the guide. One of you on the council would be a representative on our board of directors. We have everyone is equal from the perspective of your votes. One member, one vote. There are pools that have elected, representative voting on their board of directors. Our board has one member, one vote. I'd be glad to answer any further questions or any questions. I do have some information. I'll provide it to the city clerk, and he can share it with you afterwards. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Scholl. Next up, we should have Renetta to come back up and talk about some of the cost comparison items for the group.
Can you guys hear me? What you have here is a cost comparison based on the information that was received. In the first column, we used your actual premiums for this year, for 1920. And in the second column, we have provided you with the most current or our current estimates for 2021. And then in the third column is the indications that were provided by the CJPIA. The last column, of course, is just kind of a differences between the two. I think we were able to put together the estimates. Now we are estimating a slight increase on the excess liability. That's just market driven. We're in a kind of turbulent market right now for public entity excess liability, anybody with police, because just claims, losses, increased verdicts. In fact, insurance brokers and carriers are calling it social inflation. That claim that's been reserved for 3 years at $1 million is now probably a $3 million claim, and the 3 is a 5, and it goes up and up accordingly. And the insurance companies have been getting hit with a lot of claims. So what they do is they tighten their belts, and we are anticipating a slight increase on the excess liability. The workers' comp is probably only good news in the insurance market right now. Things are pretty stable, have been for the last 2 years. In fact, we're thinking we're going to see a little bit of a decrease in that area. That has to do with kind of some agreements that the EIA had in place already, 2-year rate plans and such. So, we're pretty far down the road on that renewal. Property, we will see an increase. I mean, anybody, you turn on the news and you're seeing there's a hurricane or a fire or a, hailstorm or flooding across the nation. Those losses are impacting property rates. But overall, that's where we think that's where we believe you're going to be today. Those were the indications received by the CJPIA. I think it's important to note that, both, they're just that, estimates and indications, and they are subject to change. If something bad happens, then, it's going to change for everyone. To add on that. As both of the gentlemen before me, Rick and John, noted, The legal defense is handled differently between the CSAC EIA and the California JPA. In the CSAC EIA, the city chooses who they want to use. And the EIA or the authority will only come in if they feel, that there's issues, either with the competence of the attorney or something's going on. Other than that, you have your choice. You choose who you want to work with. The city pays all the costs, and then it's on a reimbursement plan. Once you exceed your SIR, you request reimbursement from the EIA for the funds that you've expended. CJPIA is a little bit different in that there is a panel, a panel of attorneys that you use. They've been pre-approved and screened by the authority. And in this case, I believe the city sets up an account and you're paid, it goes back and forth through that account through the CJPIA. The current, basically, the city's, legal expenses, like I said, after your SIR are reimbursed, but it's just two different concepts of how it works. A lot of cities and attorneys like to have the control. They don't want to look at a list of approved people. Others feel quite comfortable with that. So it's really just at your discretion.
Renetta, I didn't cut you off, did I?
No.
Okay. So with that being said, I think any of the gentlemen or Renetta would be available to answer any questions. So that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker requests on this side?
No, Mayor, there are no requests.
Okay. Bring it back to council. Questions? Comments?
I think this is great for us to look at. I want to, obviously there's, obviously there's more details that we'll need to hear, but I think that we've got to do something different. So that's always good to take that step. I don't know if this was on the future agenda items, but it should have been. We've talked about this before, right? So I'm glad to see that we're moving on this.
Michael?
I had a question, but it was answered on the last slide. If you could put that back up there. One before that. That one. So I noticed in the proposal in here for the California JPIA, it's a 3-year commitment.
Yes.
And so I was wondering if that premium cost at $1,065,000 was that 3-year cost. Then this slide came up, and I see that it's calculated at the bottom of the 3-year cost with the cost premium difference at the bottom. Is that what I'm seeing there?
That is a 1-year cost
For all those
coverages. Chuck.
Yeah, sorry.
You need to make sure you're on the microphone.
Yes, it's a big number, I realize. It's actually a 1-year cost for liability, workers' comp, property. Cyber is actually included within our liability program. Employment practices is also in the program, as it is for CSAC. So yeah, that is the 1-year total. In our proposal to staff, it includes 2 rather large liability claims that are reserved. We didn't have the opportunity to really flesh that out with staff as to what were those claims, what's the likelihood those reserves will actually hit. Because our pricing is largely formula driven based on sharing the allocation of costs among the members, those 2 large claims in 16, 17, 17, 18 hit the formula pretty hard in the liability program. If either of those were to come down, or if there was some reason we could believe that this is never going to happen again, those numbers could change. Since I'm here, I would like to clarify one thing on the attorneys. We do have a panel of attorneys. They go from the Mexican border to the Central Coast. We add panel counsel frequently. when a new member joins, if they don't work with one of our current panel for their litigation, and they are someone they adamant that they would like to see on the panel, we can interview them and add them to the panel. The reason we have a panel is that they understand the way we operate, the requirements that we have, the budgeting, the litigation management plans, because we're not just dealing with you, we are protecting the rest of the members as well, so we want some consistency across the way we deliver things. So, thank you.
So with that, I do have a question about the attorney. So in the way yours is set up, that when we hit the 250,000 SIR, that invokes your attorney's takeover and our city attorney is out of the process?
The way the process would work, if there is a claim that is for sure going to get into the excess layer, we will work with you to decide who the attorney is going to be, and we will actually start handling it from the first dollar. If it's agreed that this is going to be an excess claim. If it's going to be within your SIR, very likely to be within your SIR, then you would select the attorney from the panel, and you would manage it. Your staff would give direction to the panel, or city attorney would give direction to the panel counsel and the management of that case. If one of those were to go beyond, well, they're already on our panel, so they understand how we operate. So it's a seamless transition. The funding of the attorneys, the litigation attorneys, is managed through a trust fund until it gets to the time when we take it over. So when it hits your SIR, then we start paying, and you don't pay anymore. You don't have to get reimbursement for us. It's just you pay until we start paying.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I like the detailed explanation of what the comparison of all of these and everything that is involved in each one of the coverages. But I think we need to go forward and get some actual estimates, hard costs on what it would take in our particular situation and how we operate. But I like the fact that you both have training for staff and for council. I think it's...
And I guess the stuff with the training with the EAA, they have tons and tons and tons, but we also at Alliant partner with them, and we do training, on-site training for staff. Insurance requirements and contracts, we do a lot of that. Training for all your levels, for your procurement officers who are entering into contracts, we review all of those. For compliance, we teach them what they're looking for, and so we offer similar things. One thing I would want to note is, as John said, the commitment to CJPA is for 3 years. With the EIA, there's no time commitment, but if you do leave a program, you cannot come back for 3 years. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Thank you. Good presentations, all three of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Charlie, anything else? Well, I would certainly concur. I think this is a good start. I think it's always a good idea, and it's no reflection on the level of service that we've been receiving, but I think it's just prudent business acumen to look at options and see what's out there and make sure that we're doing things as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So the recommended action was to provide direction to staff, and I'm hearing that we'd like staff to bring back some more in-depth and detailed comparisons and for future.
Yeah, one of the things that will be, in terms of timing, is, time goes by, we'll get more accurate estimates from CSAC with respect to what those coverages will be. And so what we would do is get that estimate, work with Renetta and kind of drilling down what those estimates would be moving forward and what those costs are, and then we would want to bring that back to council and have some discussions then.
Okay. So I don't think you have direction. We need
Everyone agrees on that.
everybody's in agreement?
Okay. Thank you.
So have your direction.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you all for helping and putting this all together. Thank you.
That brings us to item 10D, selection of a voting delegate for the 2020 Southern California Association of Government General Assembly. And our Deputy City Clerk is going to do this staff report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. As stated in the title, the item before you is to select a voting member and an alternate member for the SCAG General Assembly, which will be held this year at the JW Marriott in Palm Desert. And the recommended action is to make selection by motion. That concludes my report. If there's any questions.
So we need one delegate and one alternate voting representative, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Bonnie and I are both on SCAG. She's on Environment and Energy Committee. I'm on Transportation. We usually trade off. I have no recollection of who did what last year. So if you want to nominate Bonnie, go right ahead.
I was going to nominate Bonnie because she's not here.
She's not here.
Decline.
And I'll second that. And I'll be the alternate. That's not a problem with me. Unless one of you guys want me.
Okay, so I have a motion by Michael to nominate Bonnie as the primary and Linda as the alternate. And you seconded it. Okay, please vote. That passes unanimously.
You had asked if there was any more. I had already voted.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't going to leave that up for you.
Well, yeah, quick on the trigger. And we'll have to let Bonnie know that the draft is back. Okay. And that brings us to City Council and staff reports. So first up, Councilmember Meyer.
Okay, my first Community Action Commission of Riverside County will be February 20th in Riverside. So that's going to be good. The second one, we have Homeless Committee, and bless your heart, that's cute, but we're going to have to change that name. Maybe we'll call it the Community Outreach Team, because that will cover the gamut of the things that we will be. Do you think that's fine? Is that fine, guys? Does it need... I don't think we need to vote, but like we just picked it for something. We're just called homeless.
The mayor established it, so if the mayor wants to change it or he would like to ask you.
I don't remember establishing that, so I'm open to. Oh, Bonnie did.
Well,
Okay.
but she had it. It was changed. Yeah.
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 So
That's why it's
your preference would be?
community outreach, just because it will. It's not going to be, just homeless because there's so many things that are in, it's going to be needy. So instead of saying all that, full outreach.
Any objections? Okay.
All right, and then our Investment Oversight Committee meeting is in March because we meet quarterly, 3 times a year now. So that will be coming up in March, and we'll announce the date as we get closer. And that's all.
Okay. Michael.
Okay, so Thursday I was up in Sacramento for the League, for a policy committee for revenue and taxation. I'll just say this. The elected officials up there, all they want to do is try to get money out of your pocket. They're just trying to figure out ways to raise taxes on almost everything. I do want to point out, and this was something that I had mentioned earlier, is that one of the conversations in this meeting was that with the way things are going in Sacramento with regards to cities, in that there's more burdens being placed on cities by the state. Cities across the state are, as we did, past Measure U, cities across the state are looking at use taxes to be able to self-fund and cover long-term liabilities. And there was a lot of discussion about CalPERS and the rates increasing for CalPERS. We did hear from the new CalPERS CEO. They are making some more strides working closely with the cities because the cities are their clients, in a sense. I mean, we're the ratepayers. So they're working with cities, looking at working with cities more closely. I don't know if they've reached out to Hemet or not, but they are making that move to get more input from cities because the cities are the ones paying the bills. So there's that. The new chair this year wanted to hear from everybody that was there, from council members to city managers to city staff, on what the priority of the committee should be this year. CalPERS was number one, working on getting the cost. I mean, we do have the benefit that our vice chair is on the CalPERS board. She's a council member from Palm Springs. So that is a positive. And then number two was housing, and how is housing going to be funded, and how to kind of fit within the governor's plan, which is a very outlandish plan, if you ask me, because it'll never happen. One, we don't have enough labor in the state of California to be able to build the number of housing units that he needs built based on his $3.5 million over 5 years. Even in the boom economy, the most that we built, number of new housing starts in California was 185. And to meet that plan, we got to build like 350,000 homes a year just to get to where he's at. So that'll never happen. So housing was one. And I was surprised that I was the only person that brought up to even come close to getting some of these housing, that there needs to be a heartfelt conversation about CEQA reform. And one other council member there agreed with what I said, because, I mean, they get it. We're not going to get housing built, and we're not going to get any affordable housing built without any meaningful CEQA reform, because that's just one of the things that drive up the cost. What else came out of that? I think that was about it. Out of revenue and taxation. Planning Commission, I didn't come to the meeting, but I actually watched the meeting on the cameras, and the Planning Commission denied a CUP for the gas station at Page Plaza. They came before the Planning Commission again to request a beer, wine, spirits license, and it was denied 3-1. Vince was not at that meeting. RCA was, I spoke about RCA at the last council meeting, and the next meeting is on Monday, which actually I won't be able to be there because I'll be out of town, so you're the alternate.
No, I don't think I am. I think Carly is this year. Carly is.
RCA?
Yep.
Can you go Monday? I'll find out for sure. I mean, I'm not going to be, actually I might be able to. I might be able to go. So RCA is on Monday. And RTA alternate, I wasn't able to go. Were you able to go? No, you were at court. I couldn't go because I was at Sacramento. And skate park committee, we haven't had a meeting yet. And I think Bonnie's heading that up, and she'll get one in the months to come. He's already on. So. Months to come. That's all.
Okey-doke. League of California Cities, I was in Sacramento Friday for the Environmental Quality Committee, and we did talk CEQA. That's number one on our list of work for this coming year. We have the three items: CEQA, water quality and availability, and contamination, all sorts of things rolled into water, and also fire. A couple of the things that we really discussed in depth was Senator Wiener's SB 378, which is the protocol de-energizing and re-energizing of electrical lines and the wildfires that took place this last year. There needs to be some work on his bill, but in theory, we agreed that it was a good thing. I was trying to think, there was one other, yeah, it's gone. It'll come back. Anyway, Ramona Bowl attended the President's Dinner last weekend, and the new cast was announced. They also announced the receipt of a bequeath from a couple here in town, and they are receiving a vast quantity of money to do some improvements and build some new structures and things at the bowl. So that's very exciting for them. Riverside County Transportation Commission, our 2 meetings this week were canceled because Thursday and Friday we have workshop on Thursday and Friday. Rivers RTA, I was asked today if I would stay on as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee for another year, and I said yes, so I'm still on that. And SCAG Transportation is next Thursday. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I likewise attended the League Policy Committee meetings on Thursday. My policy committee is Transportation, Communications, and Public Works. And one of the things that is interesting, you mentioned about the public safety power shutoff. I made a recommendation during that meeting that at least I saw the chair writing it down. I hope it goes somewhere, but I had asked that they consider establishing some sort of uniform geo-based information, so when they put out information, the people that subscribe to get the text or emails about power shutoffs, they're just reporting by grids, and that means absolutely nothing to any of us other than the people in the power industry. So I was suggesting that they really push hard to get something meaningful to the end user that they can look at on a map that says, oh, this is not going to affect me, or it is going to affect me.
Can I reply to that?
Sure.
SB 378 by Senator Wiener goes into that. That bill that is up there right now in committee was actually written and proposed by the city of San Jose. And they have their people working on it, and that was part of the thing was that the maps and the information that gets sent out are in our format that we can understand, and that when they send something out, they use a language that the layperson can understand, not what they understand. So
would it be beneficial for us to send a letter of support?
It probably could be.
Okay.
Yes, SB 378.
Thank you. All right, and another topic that was on the agenda was the FCC small cell litigation update. And we had a presentation a while back about companies wanting to come in and do these small cell things that they can put to improve cellular service and even potentially Wi-Fi, and they put them on existing utility poles or street lamps. And so we got an informational update on that. There's still a lot of things in the mix, but most cities seem to be opting and pushing for local control on that. And FCC keeps thinking that they should control it. So the league is definitely behind, again, local control on those kinds of issues. So that was good to hear. We had, not sure if I'm going to pronounce her name right, a speaker, Alyssa Kanovi, who's the undersecretary to California State Transportation Agency, and she gave us an overview of things that are underway and going to be happening in the year. And during the Q&A part, I asked if any consideration had ever been given to a different application of the acronym is COZE, that's Construction Zone Extra Patrol. So we see it when Caltrans is doing a project on 74 and you'll see a CHP unit sitting there with his lights flashing. That's primarily designed to protect the construction zone workers. The concept that I proposed to be considered would be that they utilize some of those COZE funds for extra CHP presence to deal with mitigating some of the impact of the construction zones. So not just sitting there with their amber lights on to protect the workers, but actually some additional patrol to deal with problems related to detours and rat runs that people make. So I saw her write that down. So, well, hopefully it goes somewhere besides into her notebook and the trash. But it was, I was lukewarm about being on that committee initially, and I came away thinking, yeah, there's some good things that are good to have input into. Let's see, the Water Master Board meeting is coming up. I don't have a date set for that yet, but that'll be in the future. Infrastructure Commission is yet to be formed. Hopefully we'll get that underway soon. And the Western Community Energy Board has a meeting slated for next week on the 12th, and we're rapidly approaching the Go Live month. It's projected to be May for our city. And that's about all that I have to report. We have ad hoc committee reports. SR 74 ad hoc committee. Anything?
The only thing on that is that we've asked the city manager, and I believe he's already done it, sent the information from the small business, the Gas Mart on Western, sent their information off to Caltrans with the request to correct their error.
And CDBG ad hoc?
We had a meeting already, and we've got another one to finalize on the 10th. I have a quick follow-up question to Western Community Energy Board. I don't know if this is something that's been addressed or can be addressed or can be asked of, but people that are already on net metering with Edison, when they switch over to this in the city, are people going to have to true up at that date? Can you find that out? Because if their true up date is different, they're going to get a bill from Edison. So that might be something that.
Yeah, I haven't heard it discussed at all. But that's a good question.
I think we should find out, because then if it does require a true up on net metering, we should probably get that information out to folks before.
Yeah, one of the things that they're working on. In fact, city manager and I had a meeting with the WCE director, and he said that they're working on information brochures and establishing kind of like a standard Q&A, frequently asked questions, and that information will be available. So that would be a good thing to cover.
That would be a really good thing to have. Make sure that's on there.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about it. It didn't come up in our discussion, but that's a good point. Okay. Thank you for that suggestion. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple updates. Last Thursday, the City of Riverside coordinated a discussion related to homelessness and what can be done at the regional level with cities from Riverside County, as well as cities from San Bernardino County, as well as leadership from both counties. And so we had a conversation about how that might shape up. So city managers got together last week and talked about that. This morning, members from the police department, members from the public works department listened in on a webinar that was hosted by the League of California Cities to talk about that same concept as it relates to enforcement of various types of laws and other types of items related to that. But it was good to get input from the boots on the ground folks that are dealing with that day in and day out, primarily, a lot of times the ROCKS team and some of the other folks in the police department. In addition to that, I did forward the information from Caltrans, from the business owner to Caltrans, and I'm waiting on a response from Caltrans. And then finally, I don't see her anymore, but I was going to give Clay the opportunity to introduce a volunteer that we have working in the clerk's office. So maybe you can just briefly tell us about her, Clay.
So we have a new volunteer that started, I believe, about 2 weeks ago. Fidelia Arenas. She's going to be working on records-related projects, and she's also been helping here at City Council, directing public that comes. They want to do a public comment, helped hand out agendas, so we're really glad that she's on the, helping staff.
So, thank you, Clay, and those are all my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 12, future agenda items. We did some good work last meeting and actually took some off of this list, so it's a little bit more manageable size right now.
Another one on tonight, council protocols. Well, not the protocols, but the path
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. Okay. Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Second?
Do you have to make a motion if we actually already voted on it and did it?
I thought we had to make a motion. We did last time.
I think it's been in practice to make a motion to add or remove.
Or remove. All right. We'll stay consistent. All right, we have a motion and a second to remove that item. Please vote.
But leave the council protocols on because we haven't finished that yet.
Yes.
And then,
That passes unanimously.
Mayor, I know you and Mayor Pro Tem talked about SB 378. If I could just get direction to add that to the next council meeting, we won't have to add it to the future agenda items, but I'll just add that to the next council meeting if the council would like that.
Yes. I'll make that motion. You need a motion or just direction?
Yeah, give me that direction,
Second,
please,
to
yeah.
add
Okay.
378.
Okay. Please vote. And that passes, yeah.
I do have something. Chris and I talked earlier today about the street vendors. So when I was driving down Florida Avenue today, easy up, easy up, easy up, easy up. And I guess one of the issues that he was telling me about is that some of them are getting, it's like one person will get a business license and then they'll make a copy of it and sell it off or give it to other people. I think that we need to really look at our ordinance to, one, comply with state law, but two, I think there needs to be some regulation because it gives these street vendors an opportunity to just pop up anywhere and they don't have to follow any type of building codes. They don't have to get, any business that wants to come into the city to have a brick and mortar, it's going to cost them a lot of money to be able to open up shop where these guys can just, on a whim, put up an easy up and start selling their product. And it just makes an unfair business environment in our city. And then, not to mention, these guys are blocking the public right away, and there needs to be something done about that. So.
We talked about it in one of our executive team meetings, or maybe a different meeting, but yeah, we're having some challenges when it comes to that.
In looking at that, does the state, I mean, I know they came down with more regulations on street vendors.
Yeah, that we have to allow them.
That we have to allow them, but can we regulate with the business license and a penalty if they make copies and?
And we have an ordinance that not only complies with state law, but goes to the most aggressive part that we're allowed to under state law. So it's a matter of trying to enforce it in the right instances.
So we need some newspaper coverage on that ordinance.
So let me ask you this: if we are issuing a business license and they're making a photocopying it and giving it to somebody else,
Illegal.
we can then revoke that license and give them a citation and
Yes.
send them on their way. So code enforcement's
There's a
responsible
logo
for
on
that.
it. We can take action on that too.
The item that we should investigate is whether or not, I don't believe the ordinance has anything about easy ups or temporary shelters or anything. It really just relates to their cart. So we'll look at that angle.
I mean, we need to make it so that it's, if somebody's basically falsifying a government document, we need to take action on that.
Yeah. So, probably should make that a future agenda item.
Yes.
So,
We have some, but we don't have enough.
I'll move that we look into that.
Second.
okay, please vote. And that passes unanimously.
Oh my goodness, I have one more.
There's
I think that there's just many things that are out of date that need to be updated. So, this seems to be probably a little more common than we have had, but especially because of the recent fire and all this. I had a business owner in my district contact me about animals being kept on his property by a tenant. And so whatever the business was, whatever, they were keeping animals in there. And you know that there's state codes and different things, but in the city, the residential is all governed. People don't talk about keeping animals in businesses. And so I don't know. I think that's interesting too, but maybe we can make sure that that's addressed somehow. I mean, maybe if it already is, Chris can find that out, but if we need to update something.
There's coverages in the municipal code. I was just looking that up as far as it pertains to dog parks the other day and read the whole ordinance area or municipal code about animals, and it talked about cows and horses and sheep and goats and chickens and you name it. But I don't remember what it said.
Like for a business,
Yeah,
right?
I was looking
Yes,
for
because it has it all for residential. But I mean, I think somebody could keep zebras in their office. I'm just
Well, they could if it's designated as their comfort.
because I actually contacted code enforcement, and that was kind of the funny thing. She's like, they could have zebras in there, and I can't do anything about it. So
Would that fall under
just want to make sure.
permitted uses in different zones?
Like depending on the type of animal, the number of animals.
Just so that we look at that.
If you're keeping a kennel, isn't a kennel a specific use? And
Yes.
Hey, if it would have been across the street, it would have been in your district. So.
good thing it's
Okay, so
So that's my
for
motion.
description, is animals in business regulations sufficient?
Animal control regulations for businesses.
Okay,
I don't even know what you'd like on this, but that's my
okay.
motion.
That's your motion? And a second by Mike. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Okay, I'm not going to ask if there's anything else because we took a couple off last month and added some more. Yeah. All right, that brings us to adjournment. There being no further business, council will adjourn to the February 11th, 2020 council meeting at 7 p.m. Thank you all for attending. We are adjourned.